Continuing with part 2 of the Unit 2 review. So now we're looking at what is the slope for each of the lines with points shown in the tables below. So now again, remember to always read the question, right? Make sure you guys are just doing what it's asking. In this case, they're just asking us for the slope, right? So the slope again, and remember it's our rise over run, right? The change in y over the change in x. So change in y over the change in x. Now for the first problem, if you can pretty much notice, we're looking at, we have the change in y goes from 19, 14, 9, 4, -1. So there is no particular order, or yeah, there is actually in the top one, right? And next we go -2, -1, we go 0, we go, so pretty much we're going up by 1 each time, right? Up by 1. And then in the bottom one, if you notice how it's changing, we're going down by 5, so -5, right, every time. So here our slope is going to be our change in y, which is -5, over our change in x, which is +1. So in this case, it just happens to be -5. All right. And then looking at the table, again, try to identify if there's order in the x's, right? If you notice here, we're changing by 1 each time, right? So that's perfectly fine. We can just look at the table, right? Sometimes the table will not be in order, so you have to be careful on whether you use this method or not. So here we're going to be adding 9 each time. All right. So our slope is going to be m equals 9 over 1, or just +9. Now, if anything was not given in order, right? So let's say, for example, that you guys were just given 2 values, right? The first, these two, the ones in the end, right? So pretty much we can identify the slope by using the change in x over the change in y over the change in x, right? So our change in x goes from 3 to 6, so 3 minus 6. And our change in y goes from 31 to 58, right? Which would be 31 minus 58. All right, so you do the math on top, you get 31 minus 58 is -27. And then 3 minus 6 is -3. Negative divided by negative gives us a positive, and 27 divided by 3 is +9. And then looking at problem 219, write an equation for the given tile pattern. How many tiles would be in figure 58, right? So again, in the tile pattern, that was our first situation, right? We counted how many we had in our first figure. So let's see that. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So figure 1, right? Figure 1 has 6 squares, or 6 tiles. And then we do the same thing. We count the ones in figure 2. So it's going to be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. So that's 9. And then let's see, 1, 2, figure 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. So that's 12. So now we pretty much can generate like a table, right? We can say that in figure 1, we had 6, right? Remember, x represents our figure number, and then y represents our number of tiles, right? So I'm defining the variables like we did in the previous problem. So that's x and y. And then, so if you notice, right, we still want to figure out figure 0 because that's our initial value, right? So we start off 1, 6, and then 2, 9, and then 3, 12. So we're changing, on the x's, we're changing by 1s, right? Plus 1. And on the y's, we're changing by adding 3. So again, if we want to figure out how many were in figure 0, we just go backwards, right? So if we had to add 3 to get to 6, pretty much we were at +3. So now we have our slope, right? So we have our slope, which would be, in this case, it's the change in y, which is 3, over the change in x, which is +1, times x. And then our initial value, which happens to be our figure 0, is +3. So +3. All right. So in the next problem, what is the slope of the line that passes through the points -7, -5, sorry, comma 7, and 10, comma 1? So here, what you want to do is, again, first remember that the slope is a change in y over the change in x, right? And in this case, we're given 2 points, and that's the only thing they're asking us for, right? Just the slope, not the equation, just the slope. So here, the change in y happens to be negative. So we have, remember, this is our x1, y1, x2, y2. So 7, right, minus 1 represents our change in y over our change in x, which would be -5 minus 10. So that's 7 minus 1 is +6 divided by -5 plus -10, right? Because you add them when you have two negatives. So that would be -15. And if you simplify this, right, you simplify the fraction, you get 3 over +5, or just -3/5. So that would be pretty much our slope, -3 over 5. Then looking at our last question right here, 223. So a book contains an average of 300 words per page. If you read one page in 68 seconds, what is your reading rate in words per minute, and then in pages per hour? So here, one of the things that you have to realize is that if you're reading pretty much one page in 68 seconds, that means that you're reading less words per minute than what the average page length is, right? So here we're going to try to set up a ratio, because we're trying to figure out that how many words you're actually reading per minute. So the first thing we're going to do, right? So we know that one page, right? You're reading one page every 68 seconds, right? So pretty much we want to know how many words per minute, right? Words per minutes you're reading. And then we know that one page has 300 words. Okay, so we're going to replace that one page with 300. And then from there, right, we want to make sure that when we're lining up our times, right, 1 minute has 60 seconds, right? We want to make sure that our units line up at the bottom and on top as well. And when trying to figure out how many words, X words, right, we read within those 60 seconds, right? So we read in 68 seconds, we read 300 words, and we're trying to figure out how many words we read in 60 seconds only. So here, again, if you guys remember the method to solve any ratio is that you cross multiply, right? Or draw your butterfly, and then 60 times 300, and then divided by 68 would give us pretty much our how many words we're reading per minute. All right, per minute. So that's going to be 1800 divided by 68, which is a total of 18,000. I'm sorry. So 18,000, right? Missed a zero, my bad. Divided by that gives us about 265, approximately 265 words per minute, right? So pretty much we want to know how many pages we're reading every hour. So to figure that out, if we can read one page in 68 seconds, right? We want to see how many pages we can read in 1 hour. And to figure it out, first you have to, again, make sure that the units are the same. So 1 hour has 60 minutes, right? And each minute has 60 seconds. So 60 times 60 gives us 3,600 seconds. All right. And again, we cross multiply. So that gives us 3,600 divided by 68. And that's going to be pretty much close to 53 pages in 1 hour.